Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to the LaSala Show, episode 52. Very grateful to welcome back for the second time Mr. Daniele Bolelli. How
Thank
say you, sir?
thank you for having me.
It is, just an honor anytime I get to speak to you. I listen to your podcast as like therapy. You really you bring me so much knowledge, both with the Drunken Taoist and History on Fire. I feel like I should have a degree in psychology and history just based on you, but you're a professor, so that's kind of what you do.
That's funny. Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoy the shows.
Absolutely. And so my brother is also a fan of yours, and he said while he was in California, he sat in on one of your classes,
Oh, cool.
and but the fire alarm went off. Do you remember
Oh,
this?
really? Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. There's back in the old days. Yeah, I haven't been in a physical classroom in so long because post-COVID, they moved everything online for a long time.
Right.
Now it looks like they're gonna bring it back and it's gonna be more in-person stuff. But yeah, I haven't done one of those in quite a while now.
That is crazy. So you're still in California,
Mhm.
and is Gavin Newsom the worst?
I mean, there's so much. The problem with when you talk politics is that you look at something and it's usually absolute trash. And so you think, well, anything but this must be better. And then you look at the alternatives and you're like, oh no, there are layers where you can dig and be considerably worse.
Right.
So it's another thing. Is like the political game is just sad because it's you don't see alternatives between good guys and bad guys. You see alternatives between absolutely god awful guys and people who are incredibly worse than those guys. So it's like, yay, welcome to your choices.
Right. Well, the last time we talked was I think January of last year. That was like when the lockdown was still
Yeah.
going pretty hard. You were having to teach remotely. I can't believe that you're now still having to do that.
I mean, they do have some classes. They do have a good chunk of classes in person. It's just that at some point, also for me, became choice. You know, it's like where I'm doing so much other stuff between podcasting and writing and things that if they allow me to do classes online for a while, I don't exactly mind, especially because I'm now moved outside of LA. So I have to drive quite a bit. Like to go to, like next semester, I'm going to have to teach in person at least one or two classes. That's going to be an hour and a half each way. So that kind of sucks. You know, you have a 3 hour commute back and forth. That's not exactly the stuff that you say, yay, I miss this. You know, I enjoy teaching in person. I had a blast with it, but I also have done it for 20 years. And now I'm like, if I can stay home most of the time and work from home and do a little bit in person, that works out fine, you know?
Exactly. And from what I've heard, Los Angeles traffic is
That sucks.
ridiculous.
That's
Like
bad.
you drive 5 miles and it takes what, an hour? Like what?
Yeah.
How does that work over there?
Too many people into little space. That's just how it is, you know?
Right.
It's yeah, there's something to be said about when some places get overpopulated compared to the freeway system, the access to water, all that stuff. Is like you can only add so many people, which unless you dramatically and miraculously revamp the infrastructure, you cannot have more than so many people. It just doesn't work.
Right. So a lot of LA residents, Joe Rogan, namely one of them, moved out.
Hmm.
Once all these regulations got put in. And
Yeah.
are you a California forever guy, or would you ever move maybe back to Italy?
I like Italy. I like California. I like lots of places, you know. Is I like where I'm at. I'm in a small town, hour and a half away from LA. It's all very pleasant, great weather, small enough that I can go anywhere within 10 minutes. I dig it a lot. It's very quiet. You don't hear a noise anywhere. But honestly, there are a bunch of places that I really like. And of course, each one has their advantages or disadvantages, some a lot more than others, of course. There is no perfect place anywhere. It really depends where you're at in life, what you're willing to, what you need the most, what you're willing to sacrifice, and make that choice accordingly. Because honestly, I don't feel like I haven't been anywhere where I'm like, this is perfect, checks every single box and is perfect. It's not. It's like some places are fantastic and they do have some problems. Other places have more problems than fantastic. But, among the ones that are really good and you just have some issues, it's everywhere. There's a
Right.
ton.
Right. Well, I'm looking at your background and I mean, it looks beautiful.
It
I mean,
doesn't suck, huh?
that is a nice little awning and I mean,
Yeah.
beautiful. So no complaints there.
Yeah.
So, okay. Your dad was a philosopher. Your mom was a writer.
Mm-hmm.
And was this something that they kind of pushed on you because you're kind of both now? Like, is this something that you just picked up or were they sort of like pushing you in this direction?
No, I wasn't pushed. It was more just like I look around, and that's what people close to me did. Everybody, not everybody, but the people closest to me would write. They were talking about writing books. They were showing me parts. I would read some of it. Their friends would come over. They would talk. So you grow up in a certain cultural environment. It's almost not, it's like, of course everybody writes, isn't it? And then you're like, oh no, that's not how it works. It's
Right.
just the niche in which you grow up that affects you.
So you, as a professor, you lecture for, up to an hour,
Mm-hmm.
a day. Have you ever thought about doing stand-up comedy?
It's funny. Yeah, because sometimes, especially in college, I hate, like, the bar is so low for teaching because you see the average, and the kind of, most people are nice people, I have to say. Most people who teach are very nice people, but they are not the most engaging people ever in terms of
Exactly.
entertaining.
Exactly.
So to me, it's my responsibility, if I'm getting paid to talk about stuff I like, it's my responsibility to make you walk out of the classroom, not just having learned stuff, but also being entertained and feeling like you had a blast. So, and to me, it's not that hard because it's like, if you're talking about stuff you enjoy, how the hell are you not going to be make it entertaining?
Right.
So to me, the combination of being passionate about it, but also understanding delivery, which is, I think, the problem with a lot of people, is they don't understand how to like, they think that because something is interesting to them, everybody's going to be equally interested, and they deliver in monotone or without the necessary humor, or when they throw in humor is forced or something. I treat it as a stand-up performance.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, I'm gonna tell you something super. I'm gonna try to give you something that's deep, that makes you think, that makes you do this and that, and I'm gonna make you crack up the next minute, so that I just
Right.
earn myself another minute of your attention. So it's
Yeah.
that mix of. So yeah, I think it would be something that for me wouldn't feel like that dramatic of a transition, because it's kind of what I do to begin with. Like, to me, if you don't have, both in daily, in personal life, as well as in lecture, as well as in podcasting, if you lack humor, you got a real problem, because life is hard enough. There's enough heaviness in life, and I don't shy away from any of that, but I feel that it's important to be able to laugh at everything that life throws at you, to be able to go super intense and deep and sometimes almost painful in the way as you face reality, and also be able to crack people up and lighten the mood. And so to me, that's super important. It's hard to teach it, It's like, you kind of either have it or you don't. Like, I've seen people who, because I'm always like, everybody should throw that out. And then I see people who try and fail, and I'm like, you're better off not trying to get it. You
Yeah.
are doing a better job when you are just straight laced than just going because it's not your thing.
Yeah. And especially when you're teaching history, I mean, there's so many stories within it that there is natural comedy. But if you're teaching mathematics, there's not a lot of
Of
jokes.
course, of course.
MC
The little,
squared,
yeah, of course.
Pythagorean theorem. You can only make so many jokes. And
Yeah.
hold on just a second because I forgot to turn off my AC and I look like, and look, you want to see something funny? I'm wearing a dress shirt, but I'm wearing basketball shorts.
Oh,
So,
that's funny.
but I wanted to look professional for the professor,
I see.
Dr. Bolelli.
Yeah, that's not my forte to look professional.
Yeah, well, hey, look, I'm going to do stand up tonight. I
Oh,
do
nice.
I do once a week, um, 5-minute open mic set, and
Sweet.
tonight my father, who I think is in his late 60s, is finally coming to see me.
Nice.
So
Very cool.
for the first time, I'm very nervous. Like
Of course.
usually I get up there, I don't give a fuck,
Just
right?
do your thing. Yeah.
But tonight I'm like, oh God, like he's gonna think I'm too verbose or I'm being crazy or I'm being lewd or so I had to like rewrite a whole set
Of
to
course.
try to be smarter and quicker. So
The pressure is on.
yeah, but all right, so I'm looking at you. You're so fit. I think you could kick my ass, and you're a good 10 years older than me. Um, what is it like though? Training? Is it your girlfriend now?
Mhm.
Still okay? So you haven't asked the question yet. Are you,
I mean, I asked her, is marriage anything that ever interests you? She's like, I don't give a crap. I'm like, okay, me neither. Great. So if she cared, I would have
right?
married her long ago if that's something that was important for her. I just, she doesn't care. I don't care. So there was a great, speaking of comedy, there was a great Stanhope bit about marriage where it was, the whole thing was, I'm thinking, no, maybe it wasn't Stanhope, but in any case, there was this great bit that was all about, this thing that we have, baby, is so hot and romantic and beautiful. But what we really need to take it up to the next level is bringing lawyers and bureaucracy and
Yeah, let's
that's
get
what
the government
it's about.
involved.
Yeah. And I
Exactly.
remember hearing that. I was dying laughing. It was so funny. And that's kind of how I feel. If it was, again, I'm not so anti that if it's important to the other person, I would be like, no, it's against. I don't give a crap. It's like, if it's important to you, I'll do it. If it's not important to you, it's not important to me. So that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. I proposed to my now fiance, during the pandemic actually.
Hmm.
And all of our families are asking like, oh, when's the wedding? Blah, blah, blah. And we're like, we really don't have the money to throw a huge
Sure.
extravagant party for everyone else to enjoy. And it's like like if it were up to me, we would just go to the damn courthouse and get it done and then have a
Yeah, you
fucking
can do
party
that,
afterwards.
and then use the money for a nice vacation for like you and you,
Yes.
and then that's it. That's the
Yeah.
way to go.
We park our cars in the same garage on that one.
Yeah.
So okay, back to your girl. Okay,
Hmm.
so she is a fighter, a legit
Hmm.
fighter.
Yeah.
How what if she were to fight in the UFC, what weight class would she be?
She would do 125.
Okay.
Yeah, because they cut a good chunk of weight to make it. So people that she trains with were about their weight of I fought 125. Like one of her training partner was Ili Malay, was a Bellator champion for a long time at 125.
Wow.
And yeah, that's the cut. It's a good. I mean, that's the thing I hate, by the way, about most MMA organization is how much they make you cut. I mean,
Right.
they don't make you, but it's if everybody else is cutting that much, of course. That's kind of what I like about one championship, that they test. You need to be hydrated when you weigh.
Hmm.
So you can only cut so much. You cut through diet, really. You can cut, I don't know, maybe at most 10 pounds dieting hard for a while and win that, but you can cut more than that. So you have to be relatively close to your fighting weight has to be relatively close to your walking weight.
Right. I think they should give you a buffer zone of,
Yeah.
10 pounds or so, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. 10 is good, but most people cut 20 or 30 or things that are insane.
Yeah. Well, how much UFC do you watch? Like
A lot. A lot.
like every
Almost
week?
every time.
Every week. Okay, so who are your favorite fighters?
These days, who do I like the most these days? Well, hard not to, even though he's going to have a really hard fight, so good luck with that. But I love Charles Oliveira.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just fantastic. His
He,
attitude is great. He seemed like a really sweet guy. He's tough as hell. His comeback story of all his last fights, getting pummeled and coming back to the top. It's like I really like Charles Oliveira. He's just such a great guy. Modern MMA, who else do I like? I like Ilima a lot, like my lady's friend. She's awesome. She has a great attitude about things. One guy who is semi-retired, he may come back to Bellator, but I like a lot. I had Justin Wren
okay.
on,
Right. Yeah. Just
and
heard that.
he's such what I like about, because MMA already has a reputation for being these tough guys who break a beer bottle off their head kind of thing.
Right.
So I like people who can show themselves to be something other than the stereotype, who are actually really sweet human beings, who are kind human beings, and also have the ability to go in the cage and be absolute beasts. But
Fuck you up.
right. But the idea being this is a choice, but I also can choose to be as sweet and nice as I want to be. And I like the contrast there. If all you are is this super tough guy, say, okay, that's great. But it's good to maybe to watch you in terms of technique, but I'm not that interested in terms of the story behind it. And like most everything else, what attracts you to this thing is the story.
Right.
The combat is the hook, but really it's the story behind. Like take somebody who retired long ago, like GSP, right? George St. Pierre.
Right.
What was funny about him is that he was one of the best ever. And he's always said, I don't really like fighting.
Right.
I enjoy testing myself. I enjoy, doing that, but I didn't do it because I'm a fighter per se. And so the idea that you have this guy who's very open about his insecurities, his fears, his stuff, who then got in the cage and is amazing, that's a beautiful contrast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Uh my hometown, Lafayette, Louisiana, has produced two of the best MMA fighters, Dustin Poirier
Yep.
and Daniel Cormier.
Yep.
And so
Both of them.
I always root for Poirier. I
Yep.
mean, Cormier, I saw his last fight, and that was just when I was getting into the UFC.
Right.
And it was kind of sad to see him go out like that, but he was
Yeah.
going up against, a monster.
Of
So,
course. Of course. Yeah.
but I mean that Poirier is he's a good dude. I mean, he does
Yep.
a lot. He lives, you know, probably 20 minutes away from me
Uh-huh.
in the community. Just a great guy. He's been
Yep.
with his same woman for the whole time through
Mhm.
the struggles and all that. That's my hometown hero right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Of course. No, definitely. I can see why.
All right, but you, okay. So let's go back in time. Let's say 30 years.
Mhm.
Would you be a UFC fighter?
No, I don't think so. I think like the problem with me has always been that I enjoy the problem, blessing and curse, right? I enjoy too many things. So the problem with enjoying too many things is that it's hard to make one thing your one and only priority.
Preach.
In order to be at the top of a game, usually you need to be fairly obsessive about it.
Right.
And especially when you talk about athletics. And for me, it's never been that. Like I enjoy training. I've always enjoyed training, but to go from the level of, oh, this is fun, I can even be pretty good at it, to the level of being you're competing at the highest level, you need to be obsessed, and
Yeah.
you kind of need to forget about most everything else. That has never been my thing. I've always been, there are at least 3 4 priorities I always have at any one time. So that, of course, you lose some as a result of it, but of course you gain in other ways. And never mind the fact that, I mean, something I probably wasn't aware when I was 17, but having been around enough athletes in time, I realize not the healthiest thing you can do to your body. And
Right.
generally
Well,
speaking, you'd think is the opposite, because you think like, I don't mean just fighting, I mean even just any kind of athletics. Pro athletes push their body so past the point where it's healthy, that is not just, oh, you work out and you're healthy. You are doing things that your body is not designed for. And so almost every pro athlete I know is jacked by the time they are in the mid 30s. They have a ton of physical problems and issues and surgeries and stuff they will carry for the rest of their lives. So I'm like, there are great advantages to that. If that's your dream, go for it. But there's a hell of a price to pay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like you said about the having too many other interests. Like
Mm,
that's what I've always thought about myself is jack of all trades, master of none.
mm-hmm.
Like I like to play basketball, I like to do comedy, I like to
Sure.
play music. I can't do all of them though.
Right.
I can't do all of them to the greatest point.
Sure.
I can be pretty good at all of them,
Yeah.
but I can't commit to just one thing because that's boring to me.
Me too. I'm with you on that. So to me, my thing has always been I think his life is way more interested if you can be even pretty damn good at a few fields as
Yeah.
opposed to being Michael Jordan in one field, you know?
Yeah, but then he's a social
Yeah,
retard
you
in
do
other
other
ways.
things, you know? So I'm just like, from the point of view of life, I don't think specializing is a great thing. It's great to be the number one at that game. Never mind the fact that also it's not that simple. It's not like, oh, you give up everything, but you become the number one at the game. No, there are a few tens of thousands of people who are also giving up everything, and only one is going to be the number one.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
but yeah, I've always felt that way. Like even like probably the most successful thing I do is History on Fire. And I love studying history, don't get me wrong. But if you tell me it's all that you care about history, I'm like, hell no. You know, it's one thing I care about, and I'm good at telling the stories and researching and stuff. But there's so much more than that. That just, the fact that it happens to be successful is like, cool, that's great. But the reality is that it's not just my one and only.
Right.
Whereas typically what I see in a lot of people, like if I meet somebody for martial arts, or I meet them for some intellectual thing, or I meet them for whatever I meet them for, and then you look them up and you see what they are about, everything about them is about that one thing.
Right.
And I was like, Jesus, man, it's like that thing is fun and all, but it's not that fun. You know, there's
Right.
more to life than just being dedicated to this one thing obsessively.
Yeah, it's like also he can dance. It's like
Yeah,
all right.
exactly.
Oh, fun fact, he plays the piano.
Right.
It's like but yeah, I struggle with that a lot because even picking a college major,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
I wanted to be in jazz piano, and then I wanted to be in architecture, and then I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to go into education and teach elementary school, and
Yep.
it's just like that's why college never worked for me because I couldn't choose a lane, you know.
Totally. No, in fact, for me, it's like I started doing anthropology, ended up not liking it. I started doing other stuff, ended up, and then, the thing when I started going into history was because I realized anything that has ever happened is history. So that gives me a ton of freedom to talk about whatever the hell I want, as long as it happened within a certain time frame that I get to cover. I can, like, I end up having this often the same discussions regardless of what topic I'm teaching, and because the big themes in life are always the same, the specifics that you use to get to the big themes are different. But like that's one thing that I enjoyed about history, that it allowed me to bring together a bunch of different passions of mine. Like I've taught courses about history of martial arts, I taught courses about anything you can think of, and technically it was all history, but it was so varied in the field that I could really do whatever I wanted with it.
Well, okay, so as a history expert in 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
how will they be teaching about what is going on currently, about just everything from the woke culture to the cancel culture to everything in between?
I think all that stuff is not even a footnote in history, because I think the kind of stuff we're dealing with, especially when you talk about a long time scale, is so much bigger than all the bullshit that people are worried about. Is like it's all to be seen. Right now, the writing on the wall is not great, but maybe it changes. It's all to be seen whether we're even sustainable as a civilization in 100 years. It's like Our relationship with our natural resources and our environment just flat out sucks. Like
Oh
if you
yeah.
look at the way natural resources have been dwindling and disappearing just in the last 200 years, because before it was like a slow curve of population growth, more use of resources and all of that. And there was this slow, constant curve. Last 200 years, it just exploded. The line just went straight up. So that is a serious issue. It's like the fact that we we built a civilization on basically poisoning ourselves on a daily basis. The amount of crap in our own environment, the food we eat, what we put in the soil, the materials we use every day. This is all stuff that just hard to see how this can go on for a long time unless there's a big change. So I think those are the kind of issues that are, in terms of big history, actually will matter when you talk about 100 years. Most of the social bullshit that people talk about on a regular basis or argue on social media is not even a blip on the radar. It's just completely uninteresting from a deeper point of view.
Right. And you say how it's blown up. I think the wheels are already in motion for sort of a cataclysmic, just disaster. Is it gonna? I always joke with my mom. She's like, you should go back to school, get your degree, and then you can go and teach and blah blah blah. And I'm like, the world's going to be over in like 20 years. By the time I get started, it's all going to be in ruins.
The reality is we have no idea, right? Because this is happening on a scale that's never happened before. Like, there have been a million civilizations that collapse pretty bad, but they were always localized, right? It's like in this one place, this one civilization goes down. Our world is so interconnected, and probably never before we have such a low percentage of the population that's involved in food production. So that if you don't have access to supermarkets tomorrow, most people starve within 3 weeks. So the thing is, it's a different dynamic because it's so much more interconnected. So things can happen on a global scale. But the reality is that we don't know. For all we know, somebody can figure out some amazing thing that allow us to run most of our energy in a better way. We start figuring out better ways to produce food without poisoning the environment. Boom, suddenly will look like, oh, we're about to hit a wall. Instead, it takes off and it avoids it entirely. So it's very hard to tell. That's why I don't buy, like, as much as I'm the rosy, everything is going to work out, I think is bullshit because there's really not a whole lot of evidence for that belief. By the same token, the whole, people have been expecting the end of the world for like so many years. And every time it's like, the next decade is going to be where everything goes to shit. And it's like, maybe, maybe not, So it's,
Right.
I think both things are true. Those are definitely serious issues, and probably no, the world is not going to end the next year, kind of thing.
Right.
Both are real.
So you're on my mom's side. You think I should go back to school and get my diploma?
Depends. Maybe that's a good thing for you. Maybe not. Depends really on a bunch of factors.
Yeah. Well, I think, how much of life is just being content with where you are and not about making $1 million and not about, owning a huge house, but just being content with the small things and what makes you happy and building that life for yourself.
Yeah, the reality is, if you're not content on just having a roof over your head and having your bills, because there is level. If you are dirt poor, it's kind of hard to be all happy when you don't know how you have to feed your kids that night. But once you pass a minimum level where you get to a place where you're not going to be homeless, you have food, then of course life can get a ton better and easier. But if you can't be happy on whatever that minimum baseline is, you're not going to be happy when you're making $10 million. That's just simply not the way it works.
Right.
So, and that's why you see so many people who are ridiculously successful who are absolutely miserable. because they bought into this idea that happiness would show up one day when their bank account hits certain numbers or where the house was big enough. And the reality is that these are just hungry ghosts who are just wandering around. They don't taste the magnificent food they get to have. They don't have relationships that truly feed them. They live in these palaces and they barely enjoy them. And because they never figured out how to be happy on their own, regardless of external conditions. So there's been this seeking external validation for something that just severely lacking inside, and nobody ever showed you how to start worrying about that part more.
Right. It's almost like some people got to the finish line too soon, and then they're still looking back like, wait, I thought this was it. And then they just start imploding on themselves because they got there too soon. They didn't really maybe earn it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I look at celebrities all the time, and it's just like, how with all this money and all this power can you look so miserable to me? Like Kanye West, for
Yeah,
instance,
of
it's
course.
just like I understand there's maybe some mental issues
Sure.
that have always been there, and
Yeah.
I love Kanye, or I used to back when I was in like college, and his music was awesome, but now it's like he's a joke of himself. Can you think of anybody from your childhood that was like so meaningful to you, and now you look at them and you see like them
Sure.
as
I
sort of
mean,
a clown?
most people who had tremendous success are not happy people, which seems paradoxical. But I think, I mean, that also holds true in general. Most people are not happy people, period. And the fact is, success does not change those dynamics. In many cases, success makes those dynamics even more complicated. The difference is rather than being on the generic antidepressant, you are on the gourmet antidepressant. Like you can afford the top-notch stuff, but that's really the difference. So I think the problem is if you grow up around the parents, friends, whatever it is that nourish you, that teach you how to live, and you grow up around people who are unhappy themselves, the odds that you're going to learn how to be happy, it's hard, right? It's you have to figure out like how are you going to go about it, which is why people crave cult leaders, dictators, or something, because they feel they need this strong figure out there who tells them, "Don't worry, young one. Let me take you under my wing, and I'll teach you the ways to how life can be fantastic." There's a reason why people fall for that shit because they never had it by somebody who's a real human being who actually show them how you can live life in a healthy and happy way.
Right.
And so then you chase success hoping that that's where happiness will be, and again is not. You just have a bunch of cool stuff you have access to, but you still end up shooting yourself, kind of thing. So I really think that figuring out how to be like, is that a question? Think about it like in school. Did anybody ever ask you like, what would you, if money was no concern, what would you do? What would your life look like to be happy? And most people got absolutely stumped. It's like, because there's always this idea of like, money or something, success is measurable. You can work to get to the next place, to try to bump up to the next level and all of that. But happiness, it's hard to measure because it's so it's so part of who you are deep down. It's not objective, it's more of a subjective thing. And most people don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Well, I think, being able to, like you said, pinpoint what it would be, I would say a great percentage of the world. I mean, well, not the world. God, I mean, that's the other thing that has to keep you grounded whenever you get depressed or you feel like you're having a rough day. You have to think about just all across the world how much terrible people have it than you do, and
Sure.
it you have to keep that in mind at all times with you, or else but even then, how do you balance like your own situation with someone who has it way worse than you?
Right.
Like you feel like an asshole for like, oh, my car, I have to go pay $400 for new tires, or
Sure.
like all these first world problems. And then you feel like an asshole because it's
Yep.
like, well, but there are people that have it so much worse than me.
I mean, it's good to keep perspective, but at the same time, he's also some rich kid in Beverly Hills who has money coming out of their ears, can be insanely depressed and sad and miserable. And their misery is not fake. What they feel inside is pure hell. From the outside, one goes like, what the hell is your problem? You have it. There's some kids dying of malaria across the world. You have it. What the hell do you have to complain about? But the reality is that there's other factors that play into, and you can be surrounded by luxury and in absolute hell.
Yeah. Well, it's a constant struggle for everyone, but God damn it. I feel very grateful to be with you. It's saying here that I have 3 minutes left on this meeting that's being recorded
Why don't we
before.
run? I think like Zoom sometimes does that. So why don't we run a couple more minutes? We'll cut it. You save, then you call me back, or send me another Zoom invite. I hop
Perfect.
on, and we.
Because I have a few more things.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
Okay, so here's a couple random stupid questions. Have you ever dined and dashed?
Oh, you know what? No, I haven't. But I remember one book that I loved when I was a kid because I had no money. It was called Steal This Book by Abby Hoffman, and it had all these 10,000 ways to live with no money or as close to no money as possible. Now, most of those ways don't work anymore, but it was interesting exercise to get you thinking about how you take care of the basics without having to pay. That was definitely up on the list.
Yeah, I need to buy that book, but I guess I'll try to steal it first. We'll see.
Exactly.
Did you ever win or lose a fight in like grade school?
Yeah, sure. I mean, calling them fight is usually funny because they last about 1 second.
Right, right.
It's like, but yeah, it happens. I'm a big fan. I don't mean to sound like Master Can, but I'm a big fan of the idea that if you don't hit somebody in the balls within the first second of the confrontation, you should seriously revise your priorities.
Yeah, you're waiting for them to hit you,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a
Yeah,
good
I
move.
remember once I had a thing with this guy, big dude, and I got in my face because usually fights don't just start. There's a build up to it. Got in my face. I kind of pushed him back. He gets back in my face. I'm like, okay, it's just a few seconds until. So I just threw this giant knee to his balls. He went down. He whimpered, and I was like, okay, that was easy.
Yeah.
Short day at the office.
What is it like watching your girl fight?
Oh, it's horrible. I hate it with a passion because it's absolutely nerve wracking.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
are you like I know Paige Van Zant, her man is always with her for
No,
her
sorry,
fight.
but no, I would be a terrible influence. I would just make her nervous, and no, it's just too stressful.
You gotta hit her this way and da da da. And you're putting the ice on her, you're rubbing her back with the ice pack. You couldn't do it,
Too
huh?
stressful, too stressful. Yeah.
Yeah, I always stress out for the girls when I know that their husband is there, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, you got to separate yourself, man. Like, do the training on the side and
There
have
was,
the reps, but don't just go sit in the stands for this one, and then ugh.
there was a lady actually, maybe why don't we do let's save now
Yeah,
and
well, okay,
send
yeah,
the new link.
save that.
Send you. Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Yeah.
All right.
So the thing I was telling you was there's this guy, super famous kickboxer, Raymond Daniels. He's married to Colby Norcutt, Sage Norcutt's sister. And Savannah, my lady, was supposed to fight Colby at some point, and it was hilarious because I remember the fight that I think was the fight before. He's walking his wife to the cage, doing the thing, and Colby Norcutt was telling this story that she turned over, and as they are getting ready to walk out, he's like throwing up in a corner because he's so tense. I
Oh
was
my
like,
God.
maybe you should have not gone to the cage. Maybe you would have been better off sitting on the side somewhere.
Throwing up for his wife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
This is a
mean,
guy who's been in a million fights.
so okay. would you let your daughter fight, or does she even want to? Does she show an interest?
I mean, I think like the problem with any kind of sport that involves striking is that you take a fuckload of damage to the head. Now, there are ways to mitigate it. I think when you fight at the highest level, there are only so many ways to mitigate it. So if somebody's telling you, is that the healthiest choice you can make? No, it's not. You know, it's having said that, it depends on a lot of factors. But as a general rule, making taking brain damage as part of your gig is problematic for multiple reasons.
Right. Well, if the world's going to end in 20 years anyway, so
Yeah, yeah. So it depends on a lot of factors, but yes.
yeah. I mean, we talked about this last episode, but all these Facebook posts about your daughter.
Mhm.
I mean, I just got out of working at an elementary school. What grade is she in?
She's now in eighth grade.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I was working with, from kindergarten to fifth graders, and even they are, you know, they say some crazy shit, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
I can only imagine what she is on when it comes to, like, does she have friends that can even keep up with her?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated when you're a kid, right? Because on one hand, she's very social. People like her. She gets along with people. She can be very gregarious that way and charming, and so a bunch of people want to be her friend. She's very popular that way. On the other level is she grew up in a different way. She's a different kind of person. So there are places where you can really go with kids your age because they are not going to be able to keep up. And it's not an issue of they are bad kids or they are stupid. They aren't. It's just maybe they got exposed to different things or something, and it's just hard to. And I think as kids, it's very hard when you are really good at something to because you're not really good at everything across the board. In some way you may be super mature for your age, in some ways you're not, and so you feel sort of this. Either way it sucks because you feel that you can't really communicate with kids your age unless you really bring it down 12 notches.
Right.
But at the same time, you have other ways in which you're very much a kid and you have things that you can really. So it's tricky, it's hard, but yeah, I remember she had I think she was 11. They did a test in school where they were checking they are checking your various math skills and English skills and say to see what grade you should be working on now, what material you should be at. And your English skills, communication and stuff like that, they were like, yeah, you're kind of out of our range because you're past the 12th grade level. I guess it should be in college.
Right.
And it was funny because I remember she was like, college? I read your students' papers. I hope they're not comparing me to those guys.
She's like, I'm grad student, bitch.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know about that. But yeah, it's funny because but at the same time, to me, the key question is, you have things in terms of maturity, in terms of language skills, in terms of, she also has like, she's an insanely good singer to a level that freaks me out because I can sing work shit.
I've heard.
She's a monster. And, on one hand, of course, is a good thing. On the other hand, it's tricky because the question becomes, okay, now that we have established that you have A, B, and C that are extraordinary, now what? How do you relate to other people? How do you relate to kids? Because if your way of being smart is sitting in a corner and pointing at everyone else, saying how not smart they are, you're still a dick. It's like maybe
Yeah,
you're smart, but it's hard. you
yeah,
know.
it's almost like a burden to be that smart, and or
Yeah,
or or just even on a different wavelength.
right. But then to me, it's like, okay, once we establish it and you pat yourself on the back saying, oh, I'm actually smart, then it's like, what do you do with it? Are you helping other people? Are you trying to use
Yes.
your talent to
Yes.
become create a better environment for everybody? Are you doing those things, Or are you just going, I can't believe how the unwashed masses, how dumb they are, and I'm so smart? Because then you're just a dick, and
Right.
you're not really doing anything to make life better for anybody. You're not doing anything that contributes to improving a situation. So your being smart doesn't mean shit.
Have you like approached her with that?
Oh yeah.
And how is she like respond? Because now I didn't realize how old she was. That that takes a whole level of maturity to be able to know that you're that smart and to use it for good, like you can't be Dr. Evil,
Yeah.
you have to.
I think it's a daily. I mean, fuck, I have that daily battle, and I'm 48, and I can only imagine at 13. Because on one end you have your own ego, you have your own thing, or somebody says something shitty, and you just want to pummel them and just go back and say,
Hmm.
10 reasons why you're dumb fuck, and let me explain it to you. But at the same time, it's like, so being able to transcend that ego and instead figuring out ways to use it in a way, no, let me work about resolving the situation, helping this person who's been a dick to me, that takes a whole other. So of course, sometimes you hit it and you do a great job, sometimes you don't. That's part of the gig. I think as long as you are aware of it and you make that one of your goals, that's a good thing. Whether you succeed all the time or not, that's a whole other issue.
Right. You talk about ego. Recently, my favorite, I don't know if you can tell in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know if you give a fuck about American football, but I'm a Green Bay Packers fan
I can
for the rest
tell.
of my life, forever. And my quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, recently went on the Aubrey Marcus podcast.
Mhm.
And I saw you on there too, motherfucker. I saw
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and they went on an ayahuasca retreat about
Hmm.
2 years ago.
Yep.
And he talked about the death of the ego.
Hmm.
And, you know, after he went on that retreat, he won 2 MVPs
Sure.
in back-to-back seasons.
Yep.
And he got ridiculed by all the fucking sports media, like, oh, Rodgers is just on drugs and
Sure.
everything.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, have you done ayahuasca and would you recommend it?
Uh, I don't have good experiences with psychedelics.
Okay.
I've done small amounts of mushrooms where it was a lot of fun, but honestly, it wasn't that deep. It was like being drunk, it was
Yeah,
enjoyable,
yeah, yeah.
cool, but it
It's like,
wasn't that.
oh, the wall is moving.
Yeah.
Oh.
And then I've done it in a quote unquote therapeutic setting, the kind of MAPS approved things too. And it was horrible, like not bad, horrible. It not only didn't help me deal with the kind of heavy issues I was dealing with, but on top of it, it added another layer of trauma
Oh
to it
no.
all.
God
So
damn it.
it was just really fucking bad. Now, many people are helped by it. So I'm not saying this is bad for everybody. I'm saying for me, yeah, that was awful. That
Yeah.
was absolutely awful. And so that's kind of where my, and that tends to be actually a pattern. A lot of things that people are like, this is the greatest thing ever. You do this, it will change your life. Hardly ever work for me. And I find that my process of growth and healing and things is much more complicated than take the blue pill and it's going to solve all your problems and you'll see God and suddenly all is going to be great.
Right.
Much messier, 3 step forward, 2 3/4 backward kind of process. And so I'm all for, if it works for somebody, good for them. That's fantastic. My personal thing, yeah, no, that was really. I remember once I heard Jocko Willing talking about it because somebody was talking about like doing ayahuasca and they were inviting him, and he was like, I don't think what would come out during that contest would be very good for anybody.
Right.
And I remember distinctly having that feeling when I had this horrendous psilocybin session because I remember at one point I asked this lady who was guiding the whole thing, is like, are you strong enough to deal with it? And she misunderstood me. She thought I was talking about some spiritual shit or something strong. I'm like, no, lady, I'm about to kill you probably. The chances are really high that I'm going to wrap my hands around your throat and I will kill you. I would like for that not to happen. Are you strong enough to deal with the fact that if, because, you are such you can end up in such, like in my case, I ended up in such a horrendous place where you are in so much pain and everything is tearing you apart, that is, you just want to lash out at anything around you, which was my experience. I was like, in my mind, I kept telling myself, whatever you do, please don't kill this lady, because that's not good. But there was very much there. I was in so much pain that I was like, yeah, I was not in a happy place.
I'm wondering, and forgive me if I go too far, but was this before or after your wife's death?
No, it was after, and that was precisely why I was doing it, because I was trying to deal with issues of grief, of trauma, of PTSD, of all of that, which is why it was set up for. You know, it wasn't set up for play or whatever. It's
Right.
like that's what it's advertised for, is to help you with all these things. And every other story is always, I went, I did it, and I got to this dark place, and then suddenly the light came over and everything went great. And I was like, yeah, not my experience.
Right. Yeah, no, the only time I had a great experience with mushrooms was the very first time
Mm-hmm.
when I was maybe like 19 and I just couldn't stop laughing.
That's fantastic. You know,
You
when you
know?
pick those ones, that's fantastic. That's as good as it
And
gets.
we were at my friend's uh mom's apartment and like she had just come home from work, so like we had to like play it cool, and
Mm-hmm.
that was part of it too, like, oh,
Sure.
we can't, and then
Yeah.
we couldn't stop laughing, and it was just like this, like tears were running out of our
Oh,
eyes
yeah, of
because
course.
everything we did was just hilarious.
Yep.
But then I had another one where I was just in like a really weird setting in like a college dorm, and some people were doing coke, and some people were smoking weed, and a couple of us were on mushrooms, and it was just like a weird vibe. We didn't really know these people. It
Yeah.
was like the first couple of weeks of freshman year, and like you don't trust this guy, and this guy like gives you bad vibes, and like you're reading the room, and like I had to fucking like leave, and I just like started walking, you know, like
I mean, I get that, because that's a context where it's, context is key.
yeah.
But that's why, in fact, I'm a little piece about mine, because that was everything was planned for it. You know,
It was
everything
supposed to
was,
be a
you were
good
there,
context.
you know,
Yeah.
it, but in therapy, and it was awful. So,
Well, maybe if you would have done it with RB Marcus, it would have been different.
who knows? Who knows? I remember it was, who was that? Oh, that, you remember that lady? She hasn't been in the news for a long time, but Amber Lyon. She was a
Mm,
CNN journalist who quit, and she got big into psychedelics. And for the longest time, she was telling you, oh, just do this, it's gonna solve all your problems. Do this, it's gonna help so much. And I remember afterwards, I was telling her, and she, after she went on for over and over again, that was the solution to it all. She was like, ah, sorry. I was like, what do you mean
yeah.
sorry? I mean,
My bad.
yeah, I was like, no, that's not how it works. Sorry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
no, that's, so I don't think it's for everybody. I think it can work wonders for some people in some context, and I think it can be absolutely awful in other contexts or for some people. And the problem is that it's not the easiest thing to predict. So my suggestion for anybody is, if you're gonna do it incrementally. Do
Right.
it, start really small, see how you feel.
Yeah.
Another time you can go a little deeper, but by degrees, not jump into the deep end of the pool, because it can get really ugly really fast. I mean, the amount of stories I've heard of people who went to Peru to do ayahuasca and ended up either in terrible situation or just didn't come out at all.
Yeah.
There's enough of those that I'm like, yeah, I'm sure it works for a lot of people, not for everybody.
Yeah. And I think with like, I have crippling anxiety about just existentialism. I
Yep.
mean, I just not knowing what's going to happen once we die. And so
Yep.
I feel like I would spiral even more if I did that, just because,
That was, yeah.
or it could be the other way around where it's like,
Sure.
oh, everything's going to be fine after this. This is just a fucking like dress rehearsal.
Totally, totally. That's the experience that some people have, and it helps them a bunch, and good for them.
Yeah. Well, God damn. I mean, it helped Aaron Rodgers, and I don't want to base my whole life on my favorite quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, but
No, good
you
for
know,
some people, exactly.
yeah,
It's like, I'm of the, if it works for you, it's a good thing.
right. So, okay, back to these stupid, ridiculous questions that also I'd like to know the answers to. Um, what was the worst date you've ever been on?
Mm, It's funny because in Italy, growing up, there really wasn't much of a concept of a date. You just go out with people, friends, and some you likes, and then sometime you end up just the two of you. But it's kind of like an extension of just going out with a group of friends, and sometimes you decide you just go out the two of you. But in many cases, there isn't that it's a date thing.
Right. So
So
is that more of an because you didn't come here until after high school?
yeah, exactly.
So
So
okay, yeah.
I think this is the funny thing. I think I've been on a lot of dates without knowing I was on a date. Where I was
Yes.
like, "Oh, this was a date. That was
Oh,
the perception of it. Oh,
whenever the bill comes, it's like, oh, this is a date.
I thought we were just hanging out."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So in that sense, nothing bad because it's all like I fucking didn't even know I was on dates 99% of the time.
Right.
It's yeah, different experience, I guess.
Well, you're a very handsome man. I'm sure you attracted a lot of suitors, and how many of them did you have to like turn away? Like, sorry, I'm not
You know,
interested.
I think that's another thing that fucked me up in dealing with like I've been obsessive since I was a kid about this stuff that I don't want somebody to walk away from interacting with me feeling bad. Which of
Right.
course sucks in some dating situations because it's very hard for me to like if I see that somebody wants something from me, it's very hard to let them down if I don't feel the same way.
Right.
And absolutely sucks. So I did all sort of like strange backbending mentally kind of things to try to, but yeah, in many cases, and also it's weird. This is where me trying to be a nice person always ended up being me being stupid in many cases because like in bunch of cases maybe this lady likes me, maybe I even like her, but I'm not that 100% that I'm gonna be into her 3 weeks from now. So even then where it's like this lady is just throwing herself on me and I like her and I'm still like, let's think about it a little more. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
shut the fuck up. She's an adult. She knows what she's doing. You're gonna be nice to her in any way. You cannot just because you're not gonna marry her tomorrow, just relax a little. And I struggled with that for a long time because I was like, I don't want to mess with anybody's emotions ever.
Right.
So yeah, that was kind of funny.
I had a moment where I was a freshman in high school, and I was as much in a relationship with an eighth grader as you could be.
Sure, of course.
Kissing,
Yeah.
no sex, nothing like that. But I was in high school now, and I was seeing like seniors, and
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, like, and I went to the point of not hurting her feelings so much that my way of getting out of the relationship was to tell her that I was gay.
I love that. That's fucking hilarious, and that's pretty funny.
And now we're good friends,
Right,
after all these years. So she could see how
right.
neurotic I was at that
So,
point. But
yeah,
I mean, it's just like those, like you said, you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings,
no, exactly.
and it's like you built up all this empathy, um, and some people don't have it.
No,
I would like to give some of my empathy away. I'd like
see it.
to I'd like to place it in
Yeah,
their mailbox, but
yeah.
because I feel like I have too much. I cry at stupid things.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And she still brings it up. She's like, "Are you still gay, Jesse?"
It's funny. I think Taoist comes from a good place. I think because you see so much people who are just complete dicks that all they care about is themselves and what they can get out of it. That I was so grossed out by seeing that I'm like, I never want to be that person. but of course I took it a few notches too far, where it's
Right.
like, that's good, that's a very good thing, but now relax. Now just be a little more mellow and easier, because that's healthy. Where you're taking it, granted, is for good reasons, but it's not a good place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for the record, I'm not gay. I'm I'm a gender neutral, or I'm they them. I am a man and a woman and a cat at the same time. Do you like mayonnaise?
Yeah, sure.
So you'll spread it on your sandwich? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't eat it that often, but when it's there, I like it.
Deviled eggs?
What's that?
Deviled eggs.
What are those?
Oh my God, you've never had a deviled egg?
Maybe I had it. Maybe I just didn't catch on the term.
So it's like a boiled egg, and
Uh-huh.
you cut it in half. You take the yolk out,
Okay.
and then you spread up the yolk with some mayonnaise and like some seasoning, and then you dip it back into the center of the egg, and it's a deviled egg. Usually
Cool.
at like weddings and receptions, they have a platter of them.
No, I don't think I have. I also never go to weddings. I'm like, the idea of going to a place where I'm supposed to look happy all the time. I'm like, fuck you. I'd rather go to a funeral. At least
I'm with you there. I'm with you there. Yeah, weddings are fucking torturous, especially whenever like the church is involved and you have to sit there.
I don't do that. It's like, if you're close enough to invite me to a wedding, you should also know that that's not where you want me to be.
Yeah. Well, I just went to one recently. Had to fly back to New York where I met my fiance. We lived there for 5 years, and then the pandemic happened. We moved back to Louisiana, and now we're stuck here until we make our next move. But going back up to New York just for this wedding, and it was an all-out lavish. It was like, all right, go to the church and then drive 30 minutes to go to the reception, and there's people walking around with trays, and yeah, I mean, it was nice. I ate well that day, but also it was just like, are they gonna stay married, or
Yeah, it's not my thing. Like the whole wedding thing is just, I don't know. I tend to not like most situations where there's an expected code of behavior, where there's a very clear set of what you're supposed to be. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah, like the best man has to come and give a speech. I remember that time when you were drunk. Don't stop. No, don't stop me. You were drunk and you tried to date that dude. It's like, what?
I do that shit with
And then the girl's always like, you are my forever best friend. And and she starts tearing up like it's her day or something.
Physically makes me sick. There's not enough alcohol in a wedding to be able to put up with that shit.
All right. What was your first concert? Your favorite musician that you went to go see?
First, fuck, I don't know, because I went so little. Like, my dad was always involved with, he was writing about music. So I remember going to concerts when I was like 3 or something. And
oh, damn.
But yeah, I think like that I remember going with my friends or something where I was a little older. I think I was in grade school. I must have been 11 or something. And I went to a concert. I went to see Prince.
Okay.
Prince was in Italy, and I remember we had a blast. And
I mean, did he do the thing where the concert was over and then he comes back for an encore?
Yeah, I mean, he does.
Oh, yeah.
He did. Which shows was that? I think it was like either Sign of the Times or the one before. Probably the before. I think it was before that.
Dude, that's a pretty badass concert, I could imagine.
Yeah, and I actually saw him twice live. He was great. Yeah, I got to see a bunch of cool concerts in life.
You've never experienced a hurricane, have you?
No hurricane.
I'm trying to think. What's the word? I mean, the fires obviously would be the comparison.
Earthquake sucks.
Okay. So describe an earthquake for the Louisiana listeners who have only experienced hurricanes, never an earthquake.
Earthquake is there's a second where you're like, what the fuck is that? Because you feel like the walls start shaking and you start feeling and you feel like a little shifty balance, like you're on a skateboard kind of vibe. And then you're like, what the hell? And then you're like, oh, it's a fucking earthquake. And then you hear it, it's loud, like you hear the stuff rattling and all that so on. It's definitely sketchy because you don't know how big it's gonna get. Maybe at that moment you're like, okay, this is not bad yet, and then the next second is like, whoa, it's increasing. This sucks. And so yeah, that's not fun, especially because there's nowhere, fire. At least there's usually a minimum warning where you can flee or something. Earthquake, you're just there for the ride.
Right. And the longer the shaking goes, probably the worse it's going to
Yeah,
be.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And with the fires, it's sort of like a hurricane. Like they're at least giving you a little heads up. I
Totally,
mean, like
totally, totally.
with the hurricane, you can see it coming for like a week,
Yeah, exactly.
and then people still stay in their homes. They're like, ah,
Right, because of possessions or whatever. But yeah, if
yeah,
you want physical, if you want to be out of it, you can. You can.
yeah, yeah. Some people,
Earthquake, yeah, you don't have the choice.
these southern people down here. Do I have a southern accent?
You know what's funny is like I can't hear any because I have such a heavy accent and I can't hear it on anybody pretty much unless he's like ridiculously over the top. I have a situation where somebody's like, "Hey, isn't his accent crazy?" And I'm just like, "Does he have an accent?" And everybody's laughing because they're like, "Jesus Christ, how do you not hear it?" It's like,
Right.
so I'm a bad person to ask.
Well, people down here when a hurricane's coming, I'll do my best. Even though I'm from here, I should be able to have the accent down. That goddamn hurricane not gonna fuck with me. First of all, I gotta have $2,000 of water, and I'm gonna stay with my house. You know what I'm saying? You just take my house, you take my roof off the top. I don't give a goddamn. That's what the local news sounds like
Right.
whenever a hurricane's coming,
Of course, of course.
and it's usually those people whose houses get blown away.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just like you just see their house just float up into the sky.
Yep.
Have you ever been caught masturbating?
Man, I don't think so.
Really? In all these 48 years?
Yeah, I mean, I guess no, I don't think so.
What about having sex?
Having
Like walked in on?
sex. Oh, that was funny. I remember, yeah, one time, it must have been, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. I remember like we were up in the mountains in a cabin, so we only had this one bathroom that was next to the bedroom. And middle of the night, like my daughter walks in, and we're having, me and my lady were having sex, and so it's like she goes to the bathroom, and then when she comes out of the bathroom, her eyes are totally sleepy. She's barely conscious. She's like, and she's like, "Are you guys having sex?"
Oh no.
I was like, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, you interrupted a very romantic moment. Yes."
See, that's why she's the smartest kid in the class. She's already on a different level. She's like, I've seen it, I've heard it all.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that is like we don't censor a whole lot around her. Is very just talking about sex or things like that has never been a hidden thing, or is just part of life like anything else. And you shit, I remember when she was probably about 8 or so, we were on a drive, a long drive. It was just me and her, and we were driving for like 4 or 5 hours. So at one point in hour one, she started asking me sex questions. Initially, kind of not shy, but a little, because she never it had never entered her world before, and I think she heard something at school, so she started asking me more and more. Man, we were like, she asked me question for 2 hours. It was just at the end, I was like, I don't think there's anything left associated with the topic of sex that we haven't gone over by now.
Right.
That's
Oh
like,
my God.
I answer any question I possibly could. And to me, it's like anything else. Relax, it's like you, of course, the same as everything else, you help a kid understand what's healthy, what's not. what's risky, what's not, what's mentally healthy, what's not. That is not a yes or no thing. It's not just sex is great or sex is terrible. It's like, there's context and different people and your mindset, how you approach it. And there's 10 million things of why something can be good or bad. So I don't know, my attitude with her about anything has always been, there are a few things that are objectively bad. Nobody's saying doing math is going to be great for you. That's pretty straightforward across the board bad. And here is why people do it, because it makes them feel good for a little bit. But of course, the price you pay is insane. Other things are a little more complicated. Usually there are ways in which can go really bad. There are ways it can be really good. And so your game is figure out how you can tilt it so most of the shit that's very taboo that you don't talk about with kids, I've never had problems talking about it with her, because to me it's like, well, you're not an idiot, you're smart. So let's look at the various what's problematic about it, what's good about it, why people do it, and so on and so forth. Same
Yeah.
thing with drinking. It's like I grew up, there was never a age 21, like in Italy, nobody gives a fuck. If you can be 5-year-old and you're curious about the wine that people are drinking, and they'll give you a sip.
Hey, have a little.
So you learn how to drink. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
kind of like, they'll give you a sip and they tell you a little. If you want to put your lips to it, is cool. But if you have a little too much, you're going to get a headache. And one day you take a little more and you do get a headache and you go, oh, okay. So if I stay within certain measures, it's fine and more is not. And you're like, yeah, that's how it works. I'm like,
Yeah.
and then I came here and I see people just throwing up all over themselves. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why
Yeah,
would you
just
do that to yourself?
downing bottles of vodka to try to prove a point. Like, hey, I can drink with the best of them, or like doing the shot. Have you ever done the shotgun of beer where you pierce it and you
Man, if you can believe it, I never threw up once from alcohol. Never in my life, because I never drank, but like I always got epically buzzed where I'm really happy, I feel good.
right.
Never really go past that point. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, this is the sign that this is the sweet spot. Anything past this is gonna be horrible. So let's quit while we're ahead.
I think me and you are the same, that we become happy drunks,
Yeah,
right?
totally, super happy.
Or we fall asleep. It's
Yeah,
time to go to bed.
yeah. Either way, there's a very clear end where it's good, and nothing better is gonna come by adding more alcohol.
Right. I mean, there have been so many nights where I feel so happy and so good, and I'm like, all right, I can open another beer, and then I take 2 sips and I put it down and I go to sleep. And then
Yeah,
I wake up the next morning and there's like
yep,
almost a full beer, and I'm like, God, what were you thinking? You should have just
yep, yep,
gone to sleep.
yep, totally, totally. Yeah.
But you live and you learn. All right,
Yeah.
last question. What was your ACT score
I don't think they had anything like that.
or
Where
SAT?
Yeah, I never done one.
They never did any of that. All right, terrible question. I'm sorry. Let's end it on a fun one, okay?
Go
Because it's again telling me I can't believe we've gone this long. You've been so gracious with your time.
ahead.
I didn't expect to go this long, but I gotta go get ready for goddamn dinner with my father and fiance, and then go do a stand up act.
Exactly.
Have you ever been? And you can you don't have to answer this, but have you ever been to a strip club?
Strip club always, I never saw the point, because I'm like, it's the equivalent of going to the menu where they bring out all the food and then they take it away.
Yes.
I'm missing the point here. It's just like, if you're going to a sex worker to have sex, I get that. That makes
Right.
sense to me. Or you don't. A strip club, I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah. I went with my fiance and my sister because my sister's friend was stripping at the
Right.
place. So we
Yeah.
were gonna go support her.
Sure.
Right. Terrible idea.
Right.
Just it was the worst mistake I've ever made in my life. I didn't engage in any like, lap dances or anything. My
Right.
fiance's there, my sister's there. If anything, my sister was the one being the big slut. She was like throwing money. She was like,
Yeah.
woo, like she was all out there. And I was like, there was like some college football, no, Canadian football up on the screen. And I was just like watching the football game the whole time. I got a couple beers. I was just like, all right, well, this is a single man's game. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're gonna go to it, and
Never made sense to me.
even then, you might as well go to a brothel, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Strip club, not so much.
That's stupid Americans, man. You know what? I tell you what, fucking hate Americans. Daniele Bolelli, thank you so much for being on the damn show again.
Of
I
course.
mean, I just can't believe that someone who I've listened to for so many hours and has gotten me through so many things and really given me so much perspective on things that you would kindly join me on this humble podcast. It's probably only going to get 10 listens, but you know what? It means the world to me. And I hope to meet you one day if I'm ever out in California.
Cool, man. Sound great. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Hare Krishna. And until next time, don't die.
I'll try.